On July 15th of 2016, Netflix premiered an original series that would soon be synonymous with the platform. Created by Matt and Ross Duffer, they birthed Stranger Things, which I do think is kind of wild because when I do think of Stranger Things, I think of one of the very first original series made by Netflix, and over 9 years later, there are not only so many more streaming services, each one of them has at least 10 to 20 original shows going on at once, and that's the thing that was running through my mind with the finale of Stranger Things quickly approaching. It's just how long it's been since the first season, the second season, and the time in between. I knew I liked and enjoyed Stranger Things, but I also knew because it's 2 or sometimes 3 years in between seasons, mine ain't always the sharpest. So I decided to sit back, rewatch every season because I had only ever seen each season once, and that was the same weekend they all premiered. So that's exactly what I decided to do here for you, is not just give you my review of each season of Stranger Things, but also look at it from the perspective as me rewatching it, now knowing where characters are going to end up, some of the things they set up along the way, and seeing if watching season 1 can give me a really good idea of who's dying, who's living, who deserves the happy ending, and who should never be brought back for the eventual revival. Oh, mark my words, 10, 15 years, they're all coming back It Chapter 2 style with kids, a new villain, and they're gonna milk it, man. You just know it's gonna happen, and I will be there for it. Oh yeah, this outfit, I had to dress as my favorite character, but that's not the only surprise. Some of y'all remember, I was promised a popcorn bucket from Culturefly, the creator of the Demogorgon popcorn bucket. Let's open this up real quick. The Demorgussie, live and well. Okay, it's made out of a nice tin, very well detailed. Oh, it's got a swivel mechanism to it. Oh, since each episode of Stranger Things season 5 is coming out on a major holiday, imagine popping this out with grandma next to you. Hey, granny, come get some. It's really good. That's for giving me socks 10 years in a row, Grandma! But okay, the essential premise we have here is we start off on our 4 main characters, Mike, Will, Dustin, and Lucas, who are partaking in a game of Dungeons and Dragons that's been going on for over 9 hours.
How was I supposed to know it was gonna take 10 hours?
You've been playing for 10 hours?
It gets cut short, they all have to go home, but Will is followed and chased down by a mysterious figure disappearing into the night. And that's one thing I want to put off right away. I was surprised at how much I was enjoying Stranger Things before even the introduction of 11.
It was a 7. Huh? The Demogorgon. It got me. See you tomorrow.
I know that's going to sound ridiculous, but there was a moment in watching season 1 where then 11 finally gets introduced and I go, oh yeah, there's a girl with telekinetic powers in this show. Just the idea of 3 friends so distraught, so hurt, wanting to find their friend was an interesting enough premise, and the weight of that plot point could have carried the entire show. Not just because I love what the friends are doing at the time, but Joyce's story. I really forgot how great Winona Ryder is in this because I felt all her heartbreak in watching season 1.
What have you done to my boy? Give me that!
Her spiral into madness with like the electrical issues, the phone that goes out. I don't know. I think it's stuff that just didn't hit me emotionally back in 2016 that I can so much more appreciate now. And that's something I was looking forward to with other characters like Steve and Nancy. Obviously, I dressed like my favorite character from my favorite season, but I was so ready to see this giant redemption that Steve Harrington is about to go through, because I do remember Steve breaking Jonathan's camera, being an a-hole to Nancy, sleeping and dumping her. Like, these were my memories of this show, and when I watched season 1 back, I was blown away. Steve Harrington was never an a-hole. I said it. I really thought it was common knowledge, and everybody felt that way, that Steve was an a-hole season 1, but gets redeemed in season 2, forms a bond with Dustin, and then he's a legendary lovable character there. Steve is very lovable in season 1 and rarely does anything wrong. I'm being honest.
Should we say something?
How much you want to bet he killed him? Shh.
Like, again, I thought he was just chasing Nancy to sleep with her, and once he got that, he was dipping, and that causes some tension. But no, Steve is still very much into Nancy after they've slept together. In fact, he really wants their relationship to grow and stay together.
Oh, I didn't tell anyone. Hey, I had a good time.
Yeah, me too.
The scene I remember of him breaking Jonathan's camera, oh my god, that scene is entirely justified. Jonathan was in the woods looking for his brother Will, but stumbles upon Steve's house where he just decides, I'm gonna take some photos. Now, I don't think it's as pervy as Steve made it out to be, but nevertheless, Jonathan still photographed an undressed Nancy, and even Jonathan didn't come up with an excuse and knew that was an unforgivable thing.
He was just being protective.
That's one word for it.
Oh, and I guess what you did was okay?
No, I never said that.
And that's another thing. I thought Jonathan was a character I liked and enjoyed and was happy that he kind of ends up with Nancy as the show goes on. But I'm watching season 1, and although I think he's a great older brother to Will, that scene where he's showing Will music and comforting him for his father Lonnie not being part of their lives, great, beautiful stuff, and it makes you feel hurt for him just as much as you do for Joyce. But I was still really creepy move, man. The only thing I think he does genuinely wrong is later on in the season, Nancy and Jonathan are investigating all these weird things going on, and Steve catches Jonathan in the bedroom of Nancy. I get that we as the audience understand that perspective, but through Steve's eyes, he does not know that, and he just sees a girl that he was so in love with be in a room alone with another man. I'm not saying that was the right thing to call her a slut, but dude, I don't blame him.
What is wrong with you?
What's wrong with me? What's wrong with you? I was worried about you.
He even takes a pounding from Jonathan, although I do think Jonathan was kind of justified in that.
Leave
Your
it.
mom? I mean, I'm not even surprised
Jonathan,
what happened to your
leave
brother.
it.
I'm
Obviously not a cool thing to say, but it's in the heat of a moment. He's very heartbroken, but I do find it funny that Nancy still wants Jonathan after he goes full psycho on Steve, where he was probably going to beat him to death. But when all Steve did to Jonathan was destroy his camera, and that for Nancy was Steve going too far, I don't see how she'd still be into him after this. And I do love that Steve goes back to clean up the sign, realizing he messed up big time. And his arc only gets better every season. And then that leads me into somebody, again, I thought I really liked, but my opinion changed so drastically that I'm even afraid to open up about it. I don't know if I like Nancy anymore, dude.
Barbie.
Hey, Nancy. There's something wrong with your sister. She's turning into a real jerk.
She's always been a real jerk.
Not just for the Steve Harrington stuff, but she's constantly putting her selfish interest in front of others that really affect people. We'll talk about this more as seasons go on, but let's talk about Barb. Barb was such an interesting character that there was at one point such a large fan group saying justice for Barb. She's one of the only characters that actually dies season 1. She gets taken by a Demogorgon at Steve Harrington's house while Nancy and Steve have some fun upstairs. And I remember not caring one way or the other about Barb the first time around, but the second time around, I really wanted to see why are fans so hung up on Barb, and they say justice for Barb. Totally get it. Girl did not deserve to die. And I'm gonna say now, that's probably the one flaw of season 1. Barb only exists to motivate Nancy to investigate in Hawkins. Because without it, she would not be interested in helping Jonathan with trying to find his little brother, Will. And through that is a little bit how Jonathan and Nancy's love starts to form. I don't hate the character. I won't say that. There's still moments I really enjoy and I do root for Nancy. But it's to the point that although a lot of people want Nancy and Steve eventually to be back together, no, Steve, too good for Nancy. Controversial opinion, maybe? No. You want to talk about characters I hate? I'll show you which character I actually ended up hating in Rewatch.
I'm the only one that cares about Will.
That is really unfair, son. We care.
Oh, no, not my boy Ted Wheeler. He the GOAT, and if anything, he can kill Vecna with one punch. Holly Wheeler, count your days and start it now. Because what is your purpose in this show? Yeah, I don't care if I got beef with a 5-year-old. I rewatched this completely forgetting Mike had a whole nother sister that wasn't Nancy, because for 4 seasons, girl ain't do zip. Lucas's sister at least has some lines in a couple of scenes, even grows to be kind of a prominent character in the show. Holly, she's making 5-second cameos, collecting a check, and then gone. Vecna, you better get her first when you take over Hawkins. But circling back to the 4 kids, that I think is still the really fun and exciting part to try and see them figure out the disappearance of of Will, I totally forgot the tension between Mike and Lucas when 11 steps into the picture. Like, Mike is immediately infatuated and throws himself at 11, and Lucas is very quick to call her a weirdo, to say that this isn't right, that things feel off.
You don't want us to reach the gate. You don't want us to find Will. She just made us run around like headless chickens. She knows where Will is. And now she's just letting him die. But did you ever stop to think that maybe she's the monster? I said shut up! Ugh.
And even knowing what I know about the show, I don't think Lucas is in the wrong. I think he acted super rationally. So it's very satisfying at times to see them work together. Even the moment where the secret Hawkins lab has faked Will's death and they all start crying. Or the moment where 11 gets back at the bully who's been taunting the boys all season, both at the auditorium and outside the cliff. Like, these are just like Steven Spielberg-esque moments. Things that remind me like in an Amblin movie, like with E.T. or the Goonies. Hopper honestly was at his peak in season 1. He's actually another character where I had a Nancy type of revelation as seasons went on. It didn't go as low as Nancy did, but my opinions roller coastered with Hopper season to season. But in season 1, man, he is his prime. When he's trying to solve this mystery and he goes from this like could care less small town cop to then being intrigued that he's being lied to.
This is the night of the 6th and 7th we're seeing here? Is that it?
Yeah, a lot of rain that night. See any rain on that tape?
What are you thinking?
I don't know, but they're lying.
And when it came back full circle with revealing his dead daughter and how that makes him a perfect adoptive parent for 11, good stuff. Now, the Demogorgon thing, I do want these questions answered come season 5, and I don't have an explanation. This is the only seasons where we see the Demogorgons can pierce from the upside down into our reality at any point they want. But the one right now that's getting a lot of people talking is the telekinetic opening of Will's door, because none of the Demogorgons aside from Vecna have telekinetic powers, and people have pieced together that that could have been 11 who did that, because she does admit it.
I'm sorry. Sorry. What are you sorry for? I opened it. I'm the monster.
At the time, we were thinking she was talking about the gateway to the upside down, but it could be to Will, and she does recognize Will when looking at a photo in Mike's room. This is another thing that's become a recurring thing each season, is that is 11 a monster herself? Is these abilities and things she have make her evil? I mean, also this season, it's one of the only times when 11 used her abilities and she gets these red glowing eyes. That doesn't really ever happen again. If she was the one that led Vecna and the Demogorgons to get Will in place of her so she could be free, that right there is the sin that's going to cost her life in season 5, if that ends up being true. But overall, season 1 to me is a 10 out of 10. It is definitively the best season of Stranger Things. My only other complaint than the Barbs thing is the way that they do end it on such a big cliffhanger, because I feel like season 1 could be such a great limited series. Not to say I wanted them to end it there, but just to kind of like cap it off, and a perfect open and close story would have been great, but they teased the second season, so let's talk about season 2. Now, season 2 amongst fans is widely looked at as the least favorite season. There's been more debate lately since a lot of people are rewatching it, but from my mind, this was also my least favorite season, and it was the one I wasn't really looking forward to watching again. I remember being kind of bored through a good chunk of the season. I wasn't all that into the Max character when she was first introduced. We, of course, have that backdoor pilot spin-off episode, episode 7, where they introduced 11's sister, 8, which I'm gonna just be honest with you, I skipped entirely on rewatch, which is so funny that it takes to episode 7 to get to addressing how season 2 actually starts off. The first scene of season 2 is them doing like a bank heist and getting away, and then the show's like, all right, let me show you 6 hours of something completely unrelated, then we'll get back to that opening. So not really bringing up episode 7, but on rewatch of the rest of the season, gotta say, I didn't dislike it as much as I remembered. In fact, I quite enjoy it. I still think it has a pacing issue, and it doesn't hook you in episode to episode as much as season 1 did, because like I said, even on rewatch, season 1 had me clicking next episode every time it ended. When this one, I felt like I didn't get truly into the story until about episode 5. A lot of that is because 11 is kind of sidelined a lot of season 2. In fact, the thing I brought up where if the show was just about the kids and 11 was not part of it, it'd be just as good. Season 2 is kind of the proof of that. I just wasn't all that into 11 discovering her backstory. Not that it wasn't interesting, but the storyline more dragged for me, and it just felt like the show's way of justifying why 11 can't go be with her mom and instead has to stay with Hopper and do adventures in Hawkins. But a lot of Hopper's bad parenting comes out, which is one of the things that sure is funny.
There are consequences to your actions.
You are like Papa!
And I totally get what the show was going for. Hopper being overprotective is a metaphor for him not wanting to lose another daughter, but him also constantly letting her down and disappointing her as a father did make me actually see 11 as a prisoner.
All right, look, how about I get off early tonight and I buy us a bunch of candy and we watch a scary movie together?
Promise.
I promise.
Oh, shit.
Wait. You promised I'd go, and I never leave! Nothing ever happens!
Yeah, nothing happens and you stay safe!
One thing I completely forgot about with the introduction of Max was the introduction of Billy. I kid you not, I thought Billy was not introduced until season 3 because the only memories I have of Billy was him as a lifeguard trying to bang Mike's mom. And yo, I kind of wanted him to, know what I'm saying? But I had completely spaced out Billy was a part of season 2, and that relationship with Mike's mom begins in this season. But it was kind of the underlying thing I noticed about Billy this season that I'm gonna need y'all's honest opinion on. I'm gonna talk about some fan theories and things that the fans have been speculating on for a while. One of those in particular will be the huge fan base that believes that like Mike and Will eventually end up together by the end of season 5. I won't talk about that till we talk about season 4. But Mike wasn't the only character that some fans secretly thought might have been gay. And I think there is more proof for Billy than there is for Mike. First off, Billy doesn't like any of the girls in the school.
I don't see any cows.
Clearly you haven't met the high school girls.
He has this weird soft spot and bromance for Steve.
Harrington, right? He's Steve that he's going home.
Where it looks like he was bullying him, but then he offers him advice to make him look cooler.
You're moving your feet. Plant them next time.
And that shower scene, like, that's just some interesting tension going on.
Pretty boy like you's got nothing to worry about. Plenty of bitches in the sea. Am I right?
Now, I realize this is a stretch, it's not confirmed, but I did want to bring this one up because I feel like this would be one instance where turning the character that way or closeted could actually add some interesting angles to him, because this could also explain his repressed anger, why he's a bully, how he lashes out. Of course, he has an abusive father that is responsible for most of that.
So that's why you've been staring at yourself in the mirror like some fat instead of watching your sister.
And of course, people bring up, well, then what about him when he seduces Karen Wheeler? To me, that would then turn that scene interesting because it's him using his charm and looks that he knows he has as a weapon and not necessarily to get laid. I mean, Billy would honestly be an all-time character if he wasn't racist.
I'm older than you, and something you learn is that there's certain type of people in this world that you stay away from. That kid is one of them.
That to me is the weirdest thing about Billy. That feels like that came so out of nowhere, and I don't understand why that's a character trait of his. He could have just been fine being the bully. I've seen some fans try to argue that no, he didn't mean it in a race way, but I don't see how else to explain it when he only singles out Lucas out of all the other little boys. So just saying. So then a lot of season 2 is dedicated to kind of bring Will up to speed and have him connected with the group. Something I think that does work, and I was happy to see them try to use Will and make him part of the team since he was absent most of season 1. It's just kind of the way the group starts to be split up from here on out. I mean, the show even has the boys in Ghostbuster outfits, so you would want them to be together solving this case, but they are split up this season.
She's ruining the best night of the year.
Will, what's wrong? I couldn't find you. Are you hurt? I got him. Keep trick-or-treating. I'm bored anyways.
Nowadays, there's a lot of hate for the Mike character, but in these early seasons, he was really there for Will.
He's always weird when he has to go in.
I don't know. It's quiet today. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I'm going crazy. We'll go crazy together, right?
Yeah. Crazy together.
And instead of making him someone just mopey and sad that 11 isn't around all season, having him be in the group that's trying to help figure out what's wrong with Will, I thought was some strong stuff. And now Mike is the Lucas this time around, just being unfairly mean to Max just because he's one of the only people in the group that isn't attracted to her. Gotta say though, I love the moment where 11 catches them and she gets jealous. That's just adorable. To me, this would have been a real drag of a season if it were not for the final 2 episodes, because man, that's where things get really good. One reason in particular is is for Bob. I know, talking about season 2 and I've waited this long to bring up Bob. No, Bob, to me, I think is still the most heartbreaking character of all of Stranger Things. Sorry, Eddie Munson fans, that was heartbreaking, but Bob hits on a different level for me. I absolutely love what Sean Astin brought to the role. He honestly represents what the kids will grow up to be like. I mean, even the backstory that he was the one that started the AV club that the main group of kids are a part of. He works at Radio Shack, so he's all up to date with tech. Stranger Things sometimes is a lot about embracing the nerdiness in you and using that as a superpower, and they do make Bob a superhero.
You can't. Not unless you know BASIC.
I don't know what that means.
It's a computer programming language. How about you, Doc? You speak BASIC? No. Okay. I got this.
So what I'm about to say next, I need you to understand, I love the Bob character, but Bob was just never right for Joyce. That's the one thing on Rewatch where I was like, I love Bob and I hate what's going to happen to him, but when watching him with Joyce, it just did not feel right. There was moments where she was happy and that maybe this would have been a good relationship for her to be in, but it just did not feel like the right pairing for her. Still though, the scene where Bob figures out this map that they have drawn out, which I think is a less exciting version of like the Christmas lights from season 1, but that scene of him figuring out it's a map of Hawkins, I like little reveals like that. And so it was all that stuff that honestly stung so much whenever Bob died. And even watching that episode back, man, I was watching it thinking he's gonna make it, and then the heart, no, Bob. Don't do this to me. The season continued with Steve and Nancy still being an item, but after disagreeing on whether they should fill in Barb's parents that she is dead and isn't coming back the way Will did, which I honestly thought was an awesome thing to bring in. It actually made the Barbara thing impactful because why wouldn't these parents be waiting and having all this hope that someday she just walk through that door when it literally happened for Will? So I do get Nancy's need and want to expose that, and it wasn't like Steve was totally against it. He just understood the consequences if they went about it a certain way. And that was enough for Nancy to say, bye, I'm going off with Jonathan and I'm cheating on you. Who, by the way, John really does nothing in season 2. And it just kind of sucks because I feel like they continue to do this with Jonathan every season. And I remember not feeling that way where I was like, Jonathan feels like a useless character when I'm like, I remember really liking and being happy that he was with Nancy. I am glad eventually that Nancy finds a way to expose the truth about Barb and give her parents that closure. But whatever, because Steve is still great. Not only does he get to become the babysitter for the group of kids, he takes on a group of demodogs, tries beating up Billy, but only gets pounded for the second time in a row. Why they gotta mess up that beautiful face every season, man? That's not cool. That's not cool, Duffer Brothers. And although, like I said, not my favorite season, it is probably one of my favorite finales of all the Stranger Things seasons. Because we get to have the moment of Mike reuniting with Eleven, which I think is just so precious and sweet. Confirmation that Lucas chasing Max worked out and they're gonna be an item, but it was honestly really Dustin and him getting a full circle moment with Nancy, who was mean to him in season 1. He has a nice motivational speech from her, and it's also even nice that Steve was the one that helped him out with his looks and how to style his hair. And again, all the stuff I love the most is from those final 2 episodes. If I'm being honest, season 2 is like a 7.5. I still think I enjoyed it much more the second time around than I did the first time. But hey, if this is your favorite season, then
Your mom.
Season 3. Okay. Like I said, I had a thought before going in. Not only did I dress as my favorite character, Steve, but I also wanted to dress as him in what he looked like with my favorite season. And well, putting aside season 1, because I do think that is near perfection, aside from that, I still think season 3 is my favorite. But man, did I notice the flaws this time around. In fact, it's even weird because a lot of the press tour involved with season 5, a lot of the main cast members themselves really started slandering season 3.
Would you guys be able to summarize a season in 15 seconds each?
Don't give me 3.
Good luck with Charlie.
I remember reading the scene and being like, do we have to? No, literally. I was like most of season 3.
A recap of the series up to this point, I think, will be helpful as well.
You can skip 3.
Has a connection.
And that slander is only growing with people rewatching the show. But I think there's a couple of reasons for that. Stranger Things season 3 was the first season I remember Netflix going big with the marketing. Like, yeah, the Stranger Things season 5 marketing is off the chain, and there's tons of food, clothing, merchandise everywhere for this final season. But season 3 was the first to do it. And I think it's because you can also tell this was the season where they really upped the budget. Season 3 was the mark of Stranger Things no longer being kind of a small niche fan base show, and instead entering mainstream and having to almost have a larger scale feel to accommodate that larger audience that is now watching. And some people see that as better or worse, but I think if we stayed on the plane of what season 2 brought us, I don't think we'd be talking about or getting as excited for a final 5th season. So season 3 really upping the ante, I think, is part of the thing that catapulted Stranger Things to be even bigger than it was in the first 2 seasons. But since I said this is my favorite season and I really like it, let me start off with things I didn't like about this season. For one, I think Hopper in the beginning of this season is extremely goofy. This is what I meant, where it's like, I thought I loved Hopper every season. Last season, he was a bum of a dad that just barely makes it up to 11 by the end. In season 3, he's just a fumbling doofus who is desperately in love with Joyce, which I knew they were kind of hinting at that, but there is a level of desperation to it in this season that is almost sad to watch.
You'll be home by 9.
8.
8:30, I'll pick you up.
I'll meet you there.
7. I just lost my appetite, all right?
Premises.
I'll do anything I want. I'm the chief of police.
Him as a character picks up in the later half of the season, but early on, I really wasn't liking Hopper's vibe. I actually am a little disappointed with the way they handled Billy's character, because he only actually gets to be Billy for about 1 episode and then is just controlled by the Mind Flayer the entire time. And usually I wouldn't care since he is a bully and a racist. But he's a character who makes a noble sacrifice at the end, and they even give you flashes of his backstory with his mom that's very sentimental, and I just feel like that stuff would have hit harder if we just got a little bit more time with actual Billy and he wasn't controlled by the Mind Flayer so early on in the season. I'm also 50-50 on the Russian stuff. Some of it works for me, some of it feels a little too cartoony and exaggerated, where it just feels like we really are stepping off the deep end, and the Russians building an undergrad lab in Hawkins at their mall feels so out of left field, but whatever.
Dude, you did it! You want to fight!
And the Nancy and Jonathan storyline this season, that was probably my least favorite story of the season. Yes, I hated how horrible the news people treated Nancy, and I'm glad there's moments where she kind of gets to enact her revenge and fight them when they start becoming meat puppets for the Mind Flayer. But it's the kind of stuff, again, where Nancy is propped up only to put Jonathan down or not really develop him, and he's just kind of there. There's like a really good scene where Jonathan is like, look, I know you believe in this and you can maybe afford to lose this job, but my family's broke. I have no real future after high school. This is my one shot to make a career, and you're kind of risking all that for me.
And now I'm screwed.
It's a summer job. Your life is hardly over.
My dad doesn't earn 6 figures. I don't live in a 2-story house on Maple Street.
Didn't realize I lived in a bubble.
Well, you do. You want everything handed to you on a silver platter.
Like, I honestly sympathized a lot with Jonathan in that situation, but it's really the only moment he gets because he quickly apologizes. But on the flip side of that, the conversation Nancy has with her mom, Karen Wheeler, I think does make up for that moment. Karen is like the only parent in the group that actually gets some sort of development, even if it's almost cheating on her husband. Maybe I should hate her for that, but I kind of don't. But those negatives aside, the things that I loved about season 3 is the aesthetic. Man, the aesthetic in season 3 is probably my favorite of all the seasons. Although the show, it takes place a year apart, all in the 80s, it feels like they crank up the 80s vibe every season. And this one, it was just in full force. The way the mall looks, especially in an era where malls are dying today, I love the look of that mall. Not just the 80s vibes, but the homage to familiar 80s movies was also high in here. I mean, you have a character that's literally pulled out of Terminator. Like, the guy sounds just like Arnold.
Drop the weapon!
Or what? You going to shoot?
That's one thing that Stranger Things does like so well, is pulling in these vibes where I feel like early on people complained that they were just ripping off and stealing things from other movies, when now I look at Stranger Things as a celebration of things that we enjoyed in the 80s or properties that we liked in the 80s. I wasn't alive for the 80s, but the way it is able to mash all this stuff up and throw it back out into a concrete story, I think is just awesome. Alexei the scientist, that had a heartbreaking end to it, especially for Murray, which is a character that I'll also say I hated, but on rewatch he was a lot more fun to me, and I really did feel bad for him when he lost his new Russian friend.
I just left for a minute.
For a corn dog, a stupid corn dog.
The entire design of the Mind Flayer and its meaty body I thought was so cool. Not just for its look, but just for the actual action they were able to bring on. Because I'll say season 3, 11 is Superman. This is where I stop complaining like some people do that all 11 does is pull out her hand, scream, and start to nosebleed. Season 3, she does a lot of fun stuff with her abilities, not just when she's like fighting Billy, but in that plane where she can like spy on people and figure out where they are. That was always a concept that confused me first time watching. I never understood what this was, but on rewatch, it's an ability that makes more sense, and I feel like they do get creative with it. The moment where she has to use her powers to get this meat out of her leg, that was awesome. The pushing of the car, like she was just using her powers in such a way that made her actually feel so powerful, and yet she wasn't the thing to kill the Mind Flayer at the end of season 3. That is a great use of 11, because if every season does end with her just sticking out her arms, yelling real hard, and then killing whatever the monster is, that is just boring and repetitive. So to have 11 be so outrageously strong to then all of a sudden not be able to use her abilities when the time is needed, I thought was a good mixing of expectations. But probably the thing I love the most though was Steve Harrington's arc and his relationship with Robin. I did watch season 3 thinking Robin was going to be the new love interest for Steve. The show was really leaning you that way with mentioning that Robin was obsessed with Steve in high school. His speech and kind of the way he breaks down to Robin when he's being held by the Russians, like I think that's just an improvement on the Steve arc. They give so much great development.
Do you even remember me from that class? Of course you don't. You were a real asshole, you know that?
Yeah, I know. If it makes you feel any better, having those things isn't all that great. People tell you is important. Everything that people say you should care about, it's all just bullshit.
And he's even struggling to get girls. Like, it's just things that are actually interesting to watch for his character that I'm like, I wish they would give some of that kind of love to Jonathan or other characters. But man, when it comes to writing Steve, pen is always on fire. I will say my one pet peeve though, and this is my pet peeve with every movie and show that does this, having a conversation on the floor of a public bathroom. Get your hands off that stinking dirty toilet. I don't care what you just went through. You will never catch me on the floor of a public toilet just having a simple conversation. That's one of those things I hate seeing in media because all I can think about is the nasty germs. I know people really hate the Erica character, and I don't blame you. She can be a little much at times, but the conversation that she has with Dustin, where Dustin points out, you know, you're a nerd too, you're just a different kind of nerd, I thought again goes to embracing the strength of this show is nerds using their brains as a super ability to be able to fight off these things. It made me not hate Erica as much as I did first time watching. Randomly also, I love this little exchange between Mike and Lucas where they're talking about new Coke.
How do you even drink that? It's like Carpenter's The Thing. The original is the classic, but the remake, sweeter, bolder, better.
I don't know, something dumb but kind of fun because it like reverts back to movies. Oh, and speaking of movies, every time they cut to Back to the Future or even use the Back to the Future theme in the actual show.
Mike, do you copy? Shit, not now.
Here we go. This time, come on.
I'm pretty sure that mom was trying to bang her son.
Love it. Love it. And heck, even jumping off some things that I thought I hated the first time around that I was okay on this time is all the teen angst and just relationship drama. That was a big theme in season 3 is that like Hopper and Joyce, they're having relationship issues. Mike and 11 have relationship issues. And even Lucas and Max have a lot of relationship issues.
I dump your ass.
Max has dumped me 5 times.
While I was not excited to rewatch that in season 3, it actually worked for me with the new perspective that like 11 has only really known Mike. It isn't that fair for Mike to kind of like have her locked away as his thing, make out with her, and then be able to go home, go out with friends, while of course 11 just wants to make out with Mike because it's the only interesting, exciting thing in her world. So it actually was nice to see her eyes get open and even dump Mike for a second, as annoying as that might have been to some people the first time around. Dustin with his long distance relationship and singing Never Ending Story, that's one of those Stranger Thing moments that like you write that on paper and that feels so awful. Like the world's about to end. They need this cold. Time is of the essence. Let's spend the next 2 minutes singing a song. Awful, awful in the show. Amazing, wonderful, great moment. I also really loved Will's arc in season 3, where he's someone that was almost robbed of his childhood because of what happened to him in season 1 of 2. So for him, he just wants to have a classic summer of playing Dungeons and Dragons with his friends, eating junk food, hanging out. But because they have gotten to grown up, have girlfriends, and are interested in other things, Will is left behind and still a child. Honestly, that is like a heartbreaking, sweet arc. And even when Lucas and Mike realize that they're like being a-holes to their friend, it is so sad to see Will just kind of give in and not be interested anymore. That's, I guess, where I want to bring up the first time I realized Will was gay.
You're destroying everything, and for what? So you could swap spit with some stupid girl? It's not my fault you don't like girls.
That argument between Mike and Will, that's the first time I went, oh, well, that's interesting. And like a lot of people, even at the time, they thought that came out of nowhere. And it's like, why did they all of a sudden make Will gay? What's up with that? But in rewatch of season 1, the clues were always there.
Lonnie used to say he was queer, called him a fag.
What's there to be sad about anyway? Will's in fairyland now, right? Flying around with all the other little fairies. All happy and gay.
But again, I don't see Will being sad or depressed this season because he's gay. I see it more he's sad and depressed because his friends are getting to grow up while he doesn't want to grow up. He still wants to hold on to what he kind of lost. And I just thought that was great stuff for Will. And wrapping it up with the letter Hopper leaves for 11 about wanting to create some boundaries between Mike and 11. That's something that I think first time around actually did get me to tear up. And not that it didn't the second time around, it still hit emotionally. It's just now I have the knowledge of knowing guy ain't dead. Bringing us now to the most current season up until season 5, season 4. And look, I honestly am very conflicted. I know this is kind of like the peak season for a lot of people, and don't get me wrong, there were huge highlights, and they introduced one of my favorite villains in season 4, Vecna, as well as the introduction of a great character like Eddie Munson. But man, not a huge fan of the odd run times this season. I mean, episodes go from an hour 3 minutes to an hour 27, an hour 47, to the finale being 2 hours and 22 minutes. Maybe I should be more grateful that they're giving me a movie every episode. But on rewatch, man, it just felt like there was so much stuff getting packed and dragged out that it didn't really need to be that long. I also think season 4 suffers a lot from what other seasons do, where it's basically laying the groundwork for the actual final season to end on a bang. Having to figure out how to get 11's powers back. Hopper is a prisoner in Russia, so we have to go bring him back so he can be in Hawkins. Introducing us to Vecna and his importance and connection to the Mind Flayer. Setup that is sometimes good to watch, but like I said, I think it suffers from being the buildup and then having to wait for the payoff in season 5. So that's kind of honestly how I felt about season 4. I was kind of mixed and wasn't as high on it like a lot of people. But getting into specifics, okay, let's talk about it. Eddie Munson, yeah. MVP, great. At first, I didn't dig his character. I thought he was introduced in a little bit of an annoying way in the cafeteria, but it was his relationship with Dustin and even more the way he treated Chrissy when he saw that she was down. That made me grow to really like him. His guitar solo, obviously in the Upside Down, is just an iconic and top 10 moment of the show, but that arc they gave him of a character who's constantly running away, constantly trying to avoid conflicts, it comes to a satisfying conclusion with his sacrifice and his final words.
I didn't run away this time, right? No. I think it's my year, Anderson.
Yeah, and watching that the first time, I choked up, and it's still pretty sad. Although I'll say Bob's death is still sadder, that death really does hit. I love the stuff that was happening with Lucas, where he just wants to be part of the cool kids. I just think that is something that does happen to kids when they go to high school. I know my friends, when I entered high school, were not really my same friends when I left high school. Not for any dramatic or crazy weird reasons, but just because people have different interests. Things that matter to them changed. And so seeing Lucas really want to favor and idolize being a popular kid and playing basketball, while Dustin and Mike are still doing the same old thing of Dungeons and Dragons, I thought that was actually good development for them as a group in the midst of all this supernatural craziness. I remember also when I first watched it not understanding why Max was so distraught about Billy, because it clearly seemed like they were not the closest of family, and even on rewatch learning that there's step family, I was not sure why there was such a big focus on her mourning Billy, but it's more Max feeling guilty that she's happy Billy is dead.
But it wasn't the full truth, was it, Max? You know, I think there's a part of you that wanted me to die that day. which is why you feel such guilt.
That making her feel like a horrible, dreadful person inside, to where she thinks maybe I should just be dead too for having thoughts like this. And Max is the one that honestly gets the most exciting, cool stuff this season, because yeah, episode 4 and her encounter with Vecna and the music. That entire scene, that got me choked up and goosebumps flowing. That to me is like probably top 3, maybe even top 1 moment of the show. That is such a great scene, especially because they made me care so much about someone I did not like all that much when they were first introduced to the show. And I guess with that point, I gotta talk about Vecna, because Vecna is the best thing to be introduced in Stranger Things. Nothing against the Mind Flayer. There was a lot of cool imagery and haunting things they were able to do when it was either a shadow or a meat puppet. But Vecna, let's just be honest, is a straight up Freddy Krueger ripoff. The show does not hide it. I mean, they have a Freddy Krueger stand in one of the shots right behind Max, and they have Robert Englund, Freddy Krueger himself, as a character that helps us learn a little bit about the backstory of Vecna. But whenever we got into Vecna's backstory in season 4, I gotta admit, things got a little confusing, because all season they're trying to make you believe that 11 killed the other patients, that's how she ran out and she just blocked the memory, and we're spending several episodes trying to uncover that, which, like I said, I don't think you needed that many episodes to uncover 11's memory. I think you could have knocked it out in like 1 or 2 episodes max. But when it gets revealed that 11 was the one that not only opened the gate, but threw Vecna into the upside down, causing him to look the way he does, we then see what looks like him building the Mind Flayer. And that's where I kind of want to bring up one of my nitpicks with Stranger Things as a whole, is the way they use all the Dungeons and Dragon references to name some of the creatures in Stranger Things. There's so many times characters say, oh, that's a Demogorgon, oh, that's a Mind Flayer, it's a Vecna, and then they pull out their Dungeons and Dragons book and read a paragraph like that is 100% accurate to what that character is. That's one of my pet peeves.
It's just a game. It's a game.
What the hell are we doing here?
I'm totally fine with them using Dungeons and Dragons to just name things, but to like flat out use the book and say, oh, this thing that the Mind Flayer, that's exactly what the Mind Flayer is.
Or under a spell. A curse. Vecna's curse.
I know it's just a way to pay homage, and some people even have a fan theory that by the end of the show, the final season will be that the kids were playing Dungeons and Dragons the entire time, and everything we saw was just a Dungeons and Dragons campaign, which would be a wild way to end the show, but then would also make it make a lot of sense, and then the thing I just complain about would be moot, because well, it is Dungeons and Dragons stuff. But it just felt very weird that like they immediately were like, oh, Vecna and this spell, when I'm just like, why would they assume it's a new thing? Why would they assume it's a spell? Why wouldn't they just think the Mind Flayer's back, he's taken on a new form, a gate's open somewhere, and we gotta close it? The way they switch to this completely different thing just because it's Dungeons and Dragons lore.
So if the Demogorgon was just his foot soldier, Vecna's his 5-star general.
That's where I disconnect a little bit with the way Stranger Things likes to explain things to the audience. Steve's arc this time around just continues to be improved upon. They go back to like the thing with him and Nancy because Jonathan is away in California. And man, in Rewatch, it really feels like, yeah, they're gonna set up Steve to die. He gives a whole speech to Nancy about dreaming of having kids and family.
I always had this dream that I'd have this really big family. 3 girls, 3 boys. I figured all of us Harringtons, we would pack into something like this, just see the country, learn how to surf or something.
And it just feels like things a character brings up so that when they die, you then feel bad and go, no, he never got to have those kids and family he dreamed of. And heck, while you're at it, also maybe give Nancy someone better, because what are they doing with Jonathan? This is where I want to go into some of my negatives with season 4. Jonathan's arc, just turning him into a pothead, hate it. Sure, it brought in Argyle that I actually thought was very funny and enjoyable.
Here's Risotto. He's smacking.
Still have no idea who he is.
But giving Jonathan just this pothead arc and him being nervous to tell Nancy he didn't get into the school that she wanted because that's her dream and not his, where we learned in season 1 where Jonathan has always wanted to go.
Yeah, well, where does he want to go, huh?
What?
Where does Jonathan want to go to college? NYU, Lonnie! He's wanted to go to NYU since he was 6
the show has completely dropped that personality or that arc with Jonathan, and now he's just a pothead with not much else to do. Just really, again, don't love what they're doing with Jonathan. I mentioned, I just feel like a lot of the stuff was dragged out. I thought it was honestly so weird Mike and Will have to travel hours to go meet Susie, Dustin's girlfriend, where she's in Utah and has a Mormon family with a ton of kids. Like, it just felt so odd to me. It's like, I understand they want to intersect unexpected characters, but that barely did anything for me. Some of the Russian stuff is interesting because I do like seeing Hopper try to escape and fighting Demogorgons with prisoners, but the Russian stuff, that's where it felt like the show jumped the shark the most. I mean, we went from Joyce being a mother who was distraught, worried, trying to figure out this puzzle about her missing kid, to then being in an airplane over Russia, crash landing, trying to break Hopper out of prison. Like, that's the kind of stuff that feels like we've lost the plot a little bit. I was also bored every time we had to cut back to Eleven and Papa. Do not care about Papa. But honestly, another character that surprisingly annoyed me in this season was Will. This is, I guess, where I should go into some of the things that people are fan theorizing that Will and Mike will end up together. Now, that's not the thing that makes me dislike Will. You know me, I don't care about stuff like that, but in watching 4 seasons back to back, there is nothing to suggest Mike likes boys. If anything, I am much stronger of the faith that when this show ends, Mike and Eleven need to be ending up together. Mike is like so in love and cares about Eleven a lot. I mean, the whole arc this season for Mike is to just admit to Eleven how much he loves her. But Will this season, he came off very whiny, very selfish. I hate seeing Eleven getting bullied at school and Will just standing back all frozen going, I don't. Same thing with at the roller rink. It feels like Will could be more involved, could help out. So like, no, I'm sorry, Bylers. Please don't be mad at me because I know y'all are strong and I've seen all the evidence you have to suggest it. Little clothing, parallels. There's just no way the show ends with Mike and Will getting together. If that happens, I will absolutely hate it. Again, not because they're gay or anything like that, but because it would just literally come out of left field. And in fact, I feel like that's how I see this scene now. The famous one where like Will cries because he likes Mike, but Mike likes Eleven. That's actually not how I see this scene. I see it more as Will just really missing that bond and that closeness he had with him as a friend. And it only further feeds his isolation and feeling lonely in the world.
I don't want you to forget that I'm here. There is nothing in this world, absolutely nothing, that will ever change that. And I'm always here for you too. I know.
But man, if it ends up happening, I guess I would say I'm wrong. But it's not gonna happen. Something I didn't completely hate, but I was mixed on. I look at characters like Jason as proof that you could have had the bully a-hole character and still be impactful into the show without just being controlled by the mind flayer. Because these group of basketball players that are hunting down Eddie Munson, I actually kind of really dug that. It's not that I like the characters, I hated them, but their storyline I felt was actually interesting to follow. I also wasn't a big fan of how separated everybody had to be, but they just knew if they did their parts, it would somehow help with the larger case. Usually I love to see when everybody does their parts as part of a plan and it comes together so well, but in season 4 it just felt a little forced. Also, although I'm kind of happy with the moment of Eleven and Hopper reuniting, especially when she says this line,
I kept the door open 3 inches. I never stopped believing.
I wanted that scene to be a little longer, more impactful, but we quickly then have to tease season 5 and the sky and the war that's coming. So honestly, I'm not as big on season 4 like a lot of people, but I wouldn't rank it at the bottom. It's still a really good season with a lot of high and great moments. I just feel like it was very dragged out, and I'm hoping season 5 doesn't suffer with that because they're said to have similar run times of those episodes. I'd much prefer have hour episodes with a tight run time than just 2-hour episodes where things feel dragged out. But this is where I throw off to you guys. I gave you my opinion on all 4 seasons of Stranger Things. Any things you agree with me on, disagree with me on, your theories, your thoughts, favorite moments, least favorite moments. I can't wait to see how all this wraps up, so stay tuned for my reviews of season 5. Till then, please don't kill Steve Harrington. Just please don't. Please don't.